The band L7 emerged on a lot of people's radar during the early 90s and were lumped in with the grunge movement. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that they were the only band at the time from LA who was signed to Seattle label Sub Pop, or the fact that they were a huge influence on the members of Nirvana. They also drew on similar influences like the Ramones and Motorhead, and the quartet stood out because they were an all-girl group in a world that was mostly dominated by male musicians. They also shared another similarity in the fact that they championed similar social causes, and they soon became known for both their onstage and offstage antics. In today's video, I wanted to highlight what happened during one of the band's performances at the Reading Festival in 1992. Almost 30 years ago, the punk band L7 performed at the Reading Festival in 1992 and sparked, no pun intended, one of the most memorable moments in the festival and grunge's history. L7 would perform on a Sunday afternoon at the festival, a day that was dominated by a who's who of alternative rock, including the Melvins, Screaming Trees, Mudhoney, and Nirvana. The news surrounding the festival was heavily dominated by the birth of Kurt Cobain's daughter and the health of Nirvana's frontman, who memorably was brought on stage in a wheelchair. According to the Guardian newspaper, there were conflicting reports over exactly what happened. According to one review by The Independent, it claimed L7 was pelted with mud for, and I quote, apparently for the crime of not being men, but the story doesn't check out as Mudhoney, who played the same day, were also hit with mud. Most of the other stories claim that the band was having technical difficulties with their audio and onstage equipment, and the members of L7 complained about not having a sound check and problems with their monitors that day. The group's set had to be stopped while the problems were worked out, and it appears the restless crowd began hurling mud on stage, some of which hit the band members and knocked their instruments out of tune. As a sign of protest, frontwoman Donita Sparks removed her tampon on stage. Here's a clip of what happened.
The rowdy fans started slinging mud at the stage. The solution.
I got a little quick right now. Eat my used tampon. Oh, Jesus.
Sparks would look back at the incident, telling Rolling Stone 25 years later, "I went performance art on their ass." While bassist Jennifer Finch would add, "They were throwing mud, we threw blood." The band would release a documentary titled Pretend We're Dead in 2017, and Sparks reflected more on the situation, saying, "I wanted to do something that would amuse me because I wasn't having a good time." She would admit the removal was difficult because she had duct taped her shorts that day because she didn't have a belt with her at the time. She would recall, "It was not smooth at all." It would turn out someone from the crowd chucked the item back on stage, and it sat on the edge of one of the monitors where it stayed during Nick Cave's and the Bad Seeds sets later that day. As soon as the band headed back to their trailer, they were met by their publicist, who frantically tried to put together a press release. Sparks would be unapologetic about the incident, and what should have garnered an enormous amount of press coverage and a higher profile really just represented the band's peak. Sparks would tell Rolling Stone, "We were expecting to keep going up. That show started the plateau." In just a few short years, Nirvana was done, a new wave of music was ushered in, led by Britpop, The Offspring, and Green Day. L7, for their part, managed to stay together until 2001 when they broke up and reformed almost a decade later in 2013. That event that happened that day at Reading still resonates with some of the band's fans, as Finch would tell Rolling Stone that some fans throw their own clean tampons on stage with the words "I love you" written on them in red markers. In the same interview with Rolling Stone, Sparks would reveal that on Instagram she uses the hashtag tampon thrower. She would even go on to say that the incident inspired a TV show on Netflix called Sense8, saying, "There's a scene where she throws a tampon on a guy and it's an L7 song playing in the background, or there's a poster of L7, and we were told by the filmmaker that it was indeed an homage." I think that female comics are getting more and more brave talking about that stuff too, and just young women are going to school with blood on them. You know what I mean, she'd say. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like button and subscribe, and we'll see you again on Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.